Dr. Lear. So the purpose of this sales pitch, the what I'm going to be going over with you right now, is just to kind of get all the lottery information together and determine whether or not that the North Carolina lottery would impact the Virginia lottery sales at all. And we're going to use the data that we used in the last assignment, but we're also going to use the new regression analysis data. And just to define that, regression analysis is a set of statistical methods used for the estimation of relationships between a dependent variable and one or more independent variables. And basically, it just kind of helps predict the future values of whatever dependent variables based on the values of the independent variables. Because obviously, we can't have more than one dependent variable because that one can't change. But having the multiple independent variables really helps. Another great aspect that we can kind of use regression analysis for is it helps understand the nature and strength of the relationships between the variables. As I said, the independent variables as well as the dependent variable and how they kind of relate to one another. And when you examine the regression coefficients, we can determine which independent variable have a significant impact on the dependent variable and the direction of the impact, because you can kind of isolate it. And we can also test hypotheses and the relationships between the variables. We can compare the estimated coefficients, and we can hypothesize values or conduct hypothesis tests on the coefficients. Researchers can also assess the statistical significance of these relationships. I know that's a mouthful, but another great thing is we can, in experimental setting, we can control everything, like with the dependent and independent variables. Even though we have multiple, we can use the regression analysis by controlling the effects of confounding variables by including them as covariables in the model. This kind of allows us to isolate the effects of specific variables of interest. So basically using the different variables, figuring out which ones we want or don't want, and helping us find the answers that we're looking for. And it also provides tools for assessing the overall fit of the model to the data, as well as identifying any possible issues. And some of these might be high correlation between the independent variable or unequal variance of residuals. So with the regression analysis, one of the main reasons that it's so important is that it can be utilized to assess the strength of the relationship between the variables and model it for a future relationship between them. These regression results are all going to be based around the lottery and how it is impacted by the North Carolina, or could be possibly impacted by the North Carolina lottery. One of the big things that I noticed through figure one is just that there's a huge amount of sales by per capita, which I believe is the more important figure to focus on. And when you look at it, you kind of see how you have most of the southern counties are like their sales are higher for the lottery per capita, and with North Carolina potentially getting the lottery or just fully getting the lottery, you get that competition. So even if they don't specifically live in North Carolina, they may like certain places more, like if they're right on the border and you're losing all those sales. So that can be like a huge downturn for the Virginia lottery. And I noticed that even though sales were so high, In the South, in the North, it was like almost the complete opposite, which can kind of indicate like what direction that it could be going. So we can see that the northern counties don't have as high of sales on the borders, especially by uh, West Virginia and Maryland. And I think a big factor for that is the fact that both West Virginia and Maryland have lotteries and North Carolina doesn't. But if they were to get lottery, then that would kind of make it probably more spread out, even across the per capita, because those southern counties, they have nowhere else to go, and they're not going to travel all the way to West Virginia just because if the lottery is already in Virginia, there's no reason to go outside. But again, when you're right on the border, and maybe you work in North Carolina, like there's no reason to have to buy in Virginia, unlike how it is in the current situation. With the data showing how the border of Virginia and North Carolina is such a major factor in total sales for Virginia lottery, it kind of demonstrates how the revenue for the total revenue for Virginia could possibly be affected, because North Carolina is going to be able to close in on those southern counties of Virginia that border right where North Carolina and Virginia are. Because, again, noting back to figure one, you're able to see just how many people per capita are buying Virginia lottery.